Hey everyone, so this is a continuation of the assignment M1, 2, 11, and 21, where we're creating a multi-view of a three-dimensional object. So we're creating a two-dimensional drawing, which is the multi-view of a three-dimensional object. And so today we're going to focus on M21, okay? And so in the sheet that I've got, I've already counted the blocks, but I do want to walk through that with you guys because the first thing you need to know is the size of the object that you're creating, okay? So here's our object that we are creating, and what we want to do is we kind of want to work out the dimensions for that, and you can see, or the size, and we're counting based on blocks, so we've not assigned any particular size other than just counting the blocks. So it's easy to count along the x-axis. Remember, the x-axis runs along this grid line, the y-axis runs along this grid line, and the z-axis runs along this grid line. Okay, so we'll label that x, y, and z, and remember that the width is on the x, so we'll just confirm that by writing that along the x. The height is on the y, and the depth follows the z. Okay, and as long as you're kind of let me zoom in for you guys, as long as you are following that reality, this will be fairly simple. Sometimes the blocks are harder to count because they're not in a straight line, so you've got to adjust. All right, so in this instance, if we count through here, you get 9 blocks, so I've already written that down. The height is 6 blocks, so just to confirm that, you don't always have to go along an edge. It just helps. You can just go along a straight grid line, okay? And you can see that the bottom edge and the top edge are in line with each other, so you can just count straight up, and it's 6 blocks tall. You can also count from this corner up to that center point for this arc right here, and that gets you to the top. So there's a few ways to do it. And then the depth is 4, and so that's very simple, okay? Not every object is as simple to work out the dimensions for, but the reason why I'm doing this object is because it's got a couple curves in the object itself, okay? So I'll start with the front view and begin to develop that. If you recall, the front view has, okay, so we want to put this in this quadrant. The front view has both the width and the height, so we need the x-axis running out here to the right and the y-axis running vertically. All right, and we'll count out 9 blocks, make a mark. Okay, count up 6 blocks, make a mark. All right, be sure to, you know, as Handy Manny said in the cartoon, be sure to measure twice, cut once. That's not original with that cartoon character, but anyway, measure twice, cut, and mark once. And so you want to just make sure and confirm that your measurements are correct. So I'll put, this is our left edge and our bottom edge of our front view. So I'll go ahead and create the right edge and the top edge, and now we've boxed our object. Now notice how my lines intersect each other. That's fine because I'm doing construction lines, okay? As long as you're keeping them light, and you should initially, it's okay for your lines to go further than they need to go. You definitely don't want to leave them short because then that just adds to confusion. You're trying to box the dimensions of the object. So we applied the box method. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is to establish the shape. So you can see the shape on the front view in yellow, all right, and what affects the shape is this arc here in the upper left corner and this arc in the upper right corner, okay? So I'll start with the one in the upper left corner, and sorry about that. And so we need to know the radius. Radius is an important term for measuring an arc or circle, and so that is 2 blocks. So I'll make that measurement, okay? So from this corner, right, I'll measure over, because I don't have the center point. I'm trying to locate the center point. So I'll measure over 2 and measure down 2 and just draw lines to where they're going to intersect one another. Okay, and right there's my center point. Now what I want to do is, in order to make an arc, I need to line up 3 points, right? And so to line up those 3 points, what I'm going to do is bisect this 9-degree angled line once, into 2 equal parts, so making a 45-degree angle, okay? And then I can take this measurement here, so I'll use my little problem sheet paper, and because I didn't bring over something extra to use, and I'll transfer that measurement to that 45-degree angle line. Now, how well I do that will relate to how correct or effective my arc ends up being. So there's my arc on the upper left-hand corner. Now let's go to the upper right-hand corner, and you can see if you look for the radius, here's the center point. That's where the dashes intersect each other, and you can go either horizontal or vertically, and you'll discover that it is 3 blocks. Okay, so the radius is 3 blocks. So from that corner, this happens to be the center point. Unlike before, we had to locate the center point for this example here. Now we need to just locate the edges of the arc. So we'll measure down 3 over 3. Okay, and again, you can make that square. So notice how we're using a square to aid us in creating the arc. Also, we want to subdivide one time the 9-degree angle, so we can get a third point. And again, I'll use this this sheet to measure that distance of 3 blocks. Okay, so you can see my previous measurement, just don't get confused by it. And I'll turn that around, go from that center point, and you can see where that mark is lining up. Okay, so I've transferred the measurement. The key is to do that accurately so that you can effectively make your arc. Okay, so I've made a somewhat light and construction line, and we're moving on to the third step. So the third step is to add details or features. Well, that's focused on the inside, and there's nothing on the inside as far as details and features. Right here's the details, and those create the shape. So we're looking for details on the inside. There are none, so we can move on from that step. And the fourth step is to darken the object. So let's go in and darken the object. Remember, it's best to darken your arcs and circles first. So I'll go in and darken, and these are visible lines. Okay, I don't know how well I've communicated that before. Those are visible lines, and so we want to darken those up. Don't worry about thickness. It's more important that they're dark. Okay, all right, so there are my 2 arcs darkened, and I'll go ahead and darken the rest of the shape. Okay, and so the object in terms of the view is complete, except for that if we've got curved features, we should have center lines. And so I'm going to go ahead and put in my center lines. Very important, don't forget those. You see them in the example even though they exist in 3D. You certainly need them here in 2D as well. So the arc only goes up and to the left, and so that's the direction for our center lines as well, and there's our center point. Likewise for this arc here. Now in this case, so the center lines actually cross. They're not physical. You can't touch them. They're not real. They just represent something that we need to know in order to create the curved feature. Okay, so they extend beyond the edge of the object. Well, in this case, they can't because they would overlap our visible lines. So what we do is we just draw them out here and leave a little bit of space before they touch the actual object, because the line is in line with the visible line, and we don't want to confuse anything. So we leave a space there, a little what we call a visible gap, just to make that clear. And you can see that reality also on your sheet in the example. There's a little gap there. So again, you always want to refer to your sheet to aid you in seeing how to draw your various lines. Okay, all right, that takes us to our next view. So our next view is the top view, and as you know, the front view and the top view have a dimension in common. That dimension is the width. So I'm going to project up the left edge of my front view and also the right edge of my front view. And remember, we're putting 2 blocks in between. Always put 2 blocks in between your views. Okay, so I'll just count up 2 blocks, make a line. That line is going to represent the front edge of my object. Okay, and as we know, the other dimension that the top view has is depth. So from our sheet, the depth is 4, so we count up 4, make a mark, make a line across through there, and I have now boxed, used the box method to get my top view. Okay, so from there, I want to establish the shape. Well, if you look at the object, now I don't have a physical model of this example with me, but if you look at the object, if you were looking at from the top, okay, and this is pointing down to how you're looking at the top, this is pointing to how you're looking at the front and how you're looking at the right side, it is rectangular in shape. Now, the way to prove that out is the bottom and the top should look basically the same in shape, and as your front and your back of your body do. And so you can obviously tell that the bottom of this is rectangular, so that should help you out visually. Okay, so we've got the shape. Next is to add the details. We can get the detail information from the front view, okay, and it will correspond to what we see in our top view. So I just take my edges, so I've already got my left edge up. Right here is a center line. I do need to bring this information up, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Right here is another edge, so I should have an edge right here, okay? And then there's my right edge, okay? All right, my last step is to darken the object. So I'm going to go in and darken the object. And this top view is very simple. The weird thing maybe in your mind is, shouldn't I see the curve in the top view? The answer is, remember that you're taking a 3-dimensional object and it is becoming 2-dimensional. And so it just flattens all the information out. And so you won't see, you know, if you look at the top of the actual object, you'll see the curve, but it looks like a rectangle from the top. Okay? And so right there is the darkened object, okay, and so you can kind of see that reality in your problem there, okay. So you've got this curved surface, looks like a rectangle, and then you've got this surface here which is flat, and then it starts to curve away, and there's no edge right there, okay, but there is a center line that we need to show, and so we're going to go ahead and put that center line in. I put the dash in just so I get it in the right place, and then make my long line extending a little bit beyond, about half a block beyond the object on both sides. Okay, and that is the correct top view, and it does correspond with my front view. Now, the reason why there's not a center line positioned here, it's because there's actually a visible line there, and to overlap a center line would just be confusing to someone. So we put in what's most important, and what's most important is the edge. If we had an edge here, we would not put in the center line. But since we don't have an edge here of any type, then we put in the center line to show the relationship, okay? So let's move on to creating the right side view. In the right side view has in common with the front view the height. So we go ahead and project over the bottom and the top edges of that view. Again, we're boxing the right side view. And remember from the last video, to project the depth from the top view to the right side view, we use this tool called a miter line. Okay, miter line is a 45-degree angle line that always comes from the corner of the front view. Now, I say that, let me kind of say that another way. It always comes from the box of the front view, okay, using the box method. So we are drawing the right side view from the top view, so it should come from the top right corner of the box of the front view. And so we'll bring over the front edge where it meets that miter line, drop it straight down. Okay, that retains your 2 block spacing, and likewise bring over the back edge, drop it straight down, and what that retains is your depth. So your depth was 4 blocks here, it should likewise be 4 blocks there. So we've got height from our front view and depth from our top view. All right? Okay, so moving on, we've boxed our object. We've used the box method. The next step is to get the shape. And if you look at the right side view of this object, you can see we've got a rectangle here. And in 2D, this is going to appear as a rectangle. Okay, And you can kind of see that laid out by those center lines in a way. So we've got our shape. So the next step is to establish our detail. And the only detail we have here is this edge right here about 3 blocks up. So we can get that information. We don't have to measure it. We can get that information from the front view, and right there it is. Just project it over from the front view, and we've got our details. Also, we could project over this center line right here because there's no edge there, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. We're ready to move on to step number 4, which is darken the object. So I'm going to go ahead and darken the object. And right there is how the object would look as far as darkened, excluding the center line. So I want to bring that center line in here. And I typically do the dash first. Remember to extend this center line out beyond the edge of the object about 1/2 of a block. And that is the application of creating the multi-view for M-21. Now, one thing that I would like you guys to do is come in and render one, which means to add color or shade it. So I'm going to quickly get my color pencils. And show you guys an example of that application. Okay, so you could shade them 3 different colors, or you could shade them all the same color. You want to keep this somewhat light. The ideal here is so we're not trying to lose the information that you have previously sketched. Okay, you're not trying to lose like all your construction lines, stuff like that. You're just trying to make it pop off the page a little bit. Okay, and likewise I'll do the same up here. Okay, try to keep it neat. All right, obviously you'll get better at this, you know, the more you do it. And I will, and go the same direction. If you choose to go another direction, do that after completely going one direction one time. Okay, so you can see how I'm consistently going one direction. It just makes it uniform. Okay, and if you want to go back over it, you don't really need to darken it up. This is just to make the image pop off the page. Okay, and so there are the 3 views, 3 normal views, front, top, and right side of M-21. I hope your experience, your object and drawing or sketch goes well. Thank you. Take care.